Good morning. I'm John Hawley from Seals and Recover. I am an alcoholic. I've been sober approximately 13 and a half years. 14 years will be August 26th of this summer coming up. Seals and Recovery is a podcast about pain, redemption, and progress. First thing I'd like to do is to give a shout out to my wife of 30 years who helped me combat alcoholism and had stood by me with my sobriety and pretty much has saved my life. We've married 30 years. We have 3 lovely children, John, Brendan, and Owen. This podcast will feature some potentially active duty and retired SEALs talking about their recovery and their hurdles in recovery, emotionally, physically, and professionally. It's also going to feature first responders, other members of the military, and anybody else I deem has a worthy story of recovery that I admire. I know a lot of people that don't have an issue with alcoholism, but they've had major trauma in their lives. So that being said, I'm going to have them as guests too. So it'll be a interesting podcast moving forward, but it will be centered around recovery and what people have been through, what they're doing to recover, and what their future looks like. And it's promising if you work the recovery program. I myself follow the AA format of recovery, the big book, the steps and traditions. What I admire about the AA program is the actual infrastructure of meetings, and pretty much if you've gone to an AA meeting, they're pretty much very similar. Preamble, some type of devotional prayer, and then the meat of the meeting, 7th tradition basket gets passed around, and then serenity prayer, some type of prayer going out. But the meat and potatoes of the A program that I like is the sharing portions, the speaker meetings. Okay, I am in my truck doing this podcast. It is shout out to Dodge. I got a new 2022 TRX. It's a lot of fun to drive. Back to recovery. I enjoy the meat of AA and the shares and people's experience of strength and hope. A little background about myself. I'm from Long Island, New York. I was born in 1964 in Patchogue, New York. My father had left at an early age. By 5 or 6, he was pretty much out of our lives, and my mother raised me till I was 16. She got sick with pancreatic cancer and passed when I was 17. A lot went on in those years between 5 and 6 years old to 16 and 17. My father wasn't a great guy. There was alcoholism in our family. He pretty much abandoned our family and picked another family over ours, and he'd do stuff like drive other kids to school and pass me on the roadway, going to school. And what I would do in retribution is harass and beat those kids up every week or every couple of weeks, and I probably owe an immense to those kids, but that was stuff my father did to torment me and our family. Other things he did was he impregnated a lady down the street, and she sent the abortion bill to my mother. It was a big deal. I was in my teens, and that was disclosed in our family dialogue. There wasn't a lot hidden from me growing up with what was going on in our lives, because we had a meager existence. My mother worked 2 jobs every day, cleaning houses, 2 separate houses, and 1 on Saturdays. And if I had a sporting event on Saturdays, she would come to my event. That being said, it was very chaotic growing up. I'm not playing a victim, it's just the way it was. Ironically enough, my father leaves when I was 5 or 6. My grandmother on my father's side stayed with us because she had no place to go, and my mother actually housed her and took care of her and until she died when I was in 10th grade. And I don't know how my mother did it, because it was pretty bad. My grandmother threw a lot of shade at my mother, and I resented that for a long time. And I used to do things to aggravate my grandmother. She had a walker, and I would change the heights on the walker, and thought that was funny at the time. She was very, senile or medicated up before she died, and she'd make a sandwich, and I would take the sandwich meat or whatever, or cheese off the sandwich, and she'd be eating 2 pieces of bread. I did things like that, but I thought it was funny at the time. It was just because she wasn't very nice to my mother. And there'd be stuff like this going on in our house. We didn't have a car a lot of the times, and my mother would have to drive a bike to school. She would have to drive a bike to work, and that she would get back from work at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And, the first thing my grandmother would say, "Oh, Flossie, did you pick my cigarettes up?" They call my mother Flossie. Her name was Florence, but they called her Flossie. And, that kind of stuff, it just stuck with me. My mother would just come in. That would be the first thing she'd get from my grandmother after working all day to pick my cigarettes up. And my mother would just go in her room and cry. And, I saw all that going on as a kid, and it wasn't great. There was a time when I hadn't seen my father for years, and, some guy knocks at our door in the afternoon without my mother there, and barges in the house and takes the air conditioner out of our living room. My mother had saved and bought us an air conditioner for the common area in the house to sit and cool down in the summer, and he took the air conditioner basically and said, "Your father's a scumbag, he owes us money, so we're taking this." So I don't know if my father said, "Go take the air conditioner." I don't know what happened. But of course, my grandmother defended my father with this whole thing. Rewinding to the abuse I had as a child, 5 and 6, my father would, walk by me, kick me, tell me what a piece of shit I am. Nowhere around my mother. My mother would be working. My father wasn't working. He quit his job at this time. And then I would, it would just clam up. My mother would get home from work. I wouldn't say nothing. My mother would detect the fact that something had happened. She would finally get it out of me, and then my mother would give it to my father, give the gears to my father about, you don't do that. You're a horrible person for doing that. And then my grandmother would chime in and side with my father and make up stuff that I was doing to warrant this abuse, and mental abuse and physical abuse. But that's the kind of stuff was going on. I have a sister and brother. They're great. I love them to death. My brother is essentially 10 years older. He graduated in 73, me 82. My sister graduated in 76, and they had their own lens, what they looked through growing up. My brother was with my father home for the majority of his teen years, and then he went off to college. And then my sister was there for my father, and then he left, and it was my mother. I was essentially, my lens was my father was never there, and that's the way that went. We always worked. If my mother couldn't make it to school, snow or something, I'd stay home and shovel snow and give the money to her. Clammed, did different things, and would contribute to the household, as did my sister and my brother. That was just the way it went. And then fast forward, my mother got sick with cancer, essentially from stem to stern. It took 7 months for her to die, and it was hard. It was really hard. We couldn't afford hospice, so we'd have to take turns, taking care of her, changing her diaper and her needs, her medical needs, and of course, it was hard. It was hard losing your sole provider. A lot of alcoholism in my family. I'll get into that in another podcast about looking back into my childhood and how alcohol took effect or had an effect with my drinking. Essentially graduated from high school, went in the Navy, and wanted to be a diver. And I couldn't afford civilian dive school, so somebody said, "Why don't you go to the Navy and go to dive school there?" So long story short, if anybody's been in any naval Navy program that's exclusive. It's a hard time getting there, paperwork, and then getting through the school. So essentially, got done boot camp, went to my technical school in Virginia Beach, Virginia, operations specialist school, trying to navigate my way to get to dive school. Finally, instructor took me aside and said, hey, look, this is what you need to do. Pick a duty station with a 1-year commitment. 6 months in, you could screen for dive school. So I did very well in my class, finished second, I think. So the way it goes in the Navy, the class ranking, you get to pick your orders. So the first guy the guy who got number 1 was Seaman Bragg. He was coming off a ship, so he was striking for OS. He was trying to get to OSA school. He finished first, I finished second. I picked Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, loved it. Cool mission down there, supporting SR-71s and overflights and tracking bear deltas and foxtrots from the Soviet Union into Cuba. 6 months goes by, I screened for my program. I got picked up, I went to screen for my program, and there wasn't a dive locker to screen me to go to dive school. There was an EOD detachment. So I go down to the EOD thing. I got my paperwork straight. Got to take my physical training and physical fitness test and all that. Passed it. And they're like, why do you want to go to dive school? You have to wear dungarees and you'll be on these little crappy boats. They're called junk boats. You can go to EOD and you can blow stuff up, and we wear these cool greens and we don't have to blouse our boots and all this stuff and a special pay. So that sounds great. So I got accepted to EOD assistant school, which was 5331 at the time. Had a lot of prep work with the academic side of it, and of course the physical fitness time. I had got my diving certification as soon as I got to Cuba, so I was comfortable in the water. I was always a pretty good swimmer, comfortable in the water, growing up in Long Island, swimming in the ocean, clamming, mating on offshore boats, and so got to dive school, did great, EOD school, great. They did a great job prepping me for the academic side of it. I wound up in Rota, Spain. Rota, Spain was great. It was a double detachment, 8 guys at the time. And it was a lot of senior guys there, and it was really, really great for having senior guys because they really didn't want to do anything. So I got to do all the diving, all the hard diving, with the other newer guys. I got to do, all kinds of demo. There was a lot of retrograde ammunition in Rota. And got to do all the charge calculations, unboxing the stuff, capping in, everything. It was really, really good. In my tenure in Rota, some SEALs had come through. They were doing jumping and different things, and PT'd with them, went out and drank with them, and had some camaraderie. Like, hey, instead of going back through the rest of EOD school, go through SEAL training. It's really cool. I'm like, I don't know what that is. It was 1987 at the time, and we had this stupid little Link magazine and have little descriptions of what, different, programs were. And I just knew they had this big gold thing on their chest. They're out having a good time, cool job, extra pay. So I screened for SEAL training, and I went to SEAL training in 1988. And then I got hurt. I ripped my pec muscle off. It took me a while to graduate. I finally got to SEAL. I graduated I think at the end of '89, and then reported to SEAL Team 2 in 1990 and spent quite a bit of time there. Did multiple deployments, contingency operations. Finished my tenure there at Little Creek teaching dive soup and supporting some other operations that were going on. Diving supervisor. I got out. I started doing some contracting and government contracting. I had a good friend of mine buy some of my contracts out. I went to work for him. I got back into OGA operations, other government agency operations. Did some cool stuff on projects overseas. From there, I got recruited to some major law firms to do private work, which turned out to be a lot of the stuff I was doing for some government agencies, and I've been doing that, since. Mostly working in the Middle East, North Africa region, and it's been good. From 2004 to 2011, my drinking escalated, I think for a few reasons. One, that kind of left and right flank in SEAL terminology were gone, where, you couldn't drink, certain times as a SEAL, and you had to color between the lines. When you're out, nobody's watching what you're doing, you're traveling, you're making some more money, you have autonomy, you're living this kind of dual life, and you're doing what you want to do. Well, it was getting a little bit out of hand, a lot out of hand. And my wife, set me down. There's going to be some repercussions, and this was 2011. It had been leading up to that. I was always a good dad. I always worked. I supported my kids' sporting events. I supported my family the best I could while I was, in my addiction of alcoholism. But my wife, it was getting bad, and my wife gave me an ultimatum, and basically is you either stop your drinking or you're going to be without a wife and children. And that's what I didn't want, because I came from a broken home. And August 26, 2011, I picked up a white chip, and I never looked back. My sobriety has been intact. The only thing I've done perfectly in the last 13 and a half years is I have not drank. And if I have drank, it would have been a very hard thing for me to overcome some other things that I have to deal with, and I'm dealing with now, that have to do with past trauma in my childhood and my career, and kind of moving forward with progress. I am a poster child for if you think just being sober is enough to be well, it's not. Alcohol is a symptom of something else, and it's been hard uncovering a lot of those things that I have been burying deep down inside for years. As my counselor says, that's that cellar that you don't want to go in, the junk drawer you don't want to open, that eventually the cellar is going to become overcrowded, and you're going to have to address it, and the junk drawers will have to be cleaned out, and that's what I am. And it's really, really hard to look back and understand that things happened in my childhood have affected me moving forward, even in my career, how I've dealt with loss, traumatic situations, death, witnessing death, coping with survivor's grief, lost a lot of friends, SEALs, other folks in our community of special operations. But just to open that can of worms has been painful. And again, I thank my wife for standing with me with this whole thing, because it has not been easy on her. And she has stood by me, as have my kids and my good friends. The whole isolation thing started very early on for me, which plays into, if you know anything about PTSD or traumatic issues. Isolation is a big one, but I started isolating very early because of the trauma of my father. Yeah, I got daddy issues, the trauma that I experienced from my father, and then from my grandmother not being the best grandmother that she could be, doing the stuff she did when my mother wasn't around. But I started burying a lot of stuff. In my childhood, there had to be a kind of a workmanlike manner with my mother's working, paying bills, where we were with no oil, where we were with no food. Critical thinking came in. Make sure you eat your 2 meals a day at school, breakfast and lunch, and because we didn't know how much food we're going to have. We're not going to have hot water. We couldn't afford to pay Marin oil. So take a shower after school, after sports. I always played sports. I played baseball. I played hockey. I played football in school. It went to just hockey from 11th grade on. And I was a good hockey player, and I had some scholarship offers, and I wish somebody said go to school, but I didn't. I went out west and played not very long. United States Hockey League, got cut, and came home and went in the Navy. But back to critical path thinking, it was very workmanlike manner, growing up. So there wasn't a lot of room for feelings, nourishment, love, things that I know kids need now with me having children. Not throwing any shade at my mother. She did the best she could. She grew up also an alcoholic family. She had her own battle with alcoholism that I've refocused on, and I kind of just missed until I'm going through all of this therapy, what my childhood actually was. But anywho, so things just became, you had to get done what you had to get done, and then you stuffed that stuff down. And my mother wasn't there to tell me to do my homework. She wasn't there to go to hockey practice, get extra work in, take extra batting practice, go across the street to Ruquetz, Eddie Ruquetz was a bodybuilder, used his basement to work out in. So you had to do it on your own. So that became a big theme in my life, to just get stuff done and not actually look at why I'm getting it done, where I'm stuffing these feelings, and moving through stuff. It reemerges later in life with me bearing a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma as a kid, a lot of trauma when I was in EOD. Some specific things happened that I'll talk about in another podcast, with loss of life, and then moving on into the SEAL teams where, there's a lot of loss of life, especially with the global war on terrorism. Some stuff that I did overseas, and then stuff I did overseas after I was retired from the SEAL community, that I had buried and covered it up with other things. But there is hope. There is hope. I'm on a much better path right now with my AA program. And let me, there's a disclaimer here, as we listen to some Charlie Mingus moaning, 60s jazz classics. I like the jazz music. It puts me in a good place. But I support any kind of recovery, and so does SEALs in recovery. It doesn't have to be AA themed. It could be smart recovery. It could be Christian based. It could be with your clinician. It could be with a mentor. It could be with a sponsor. If it works for you and you're getting healthy, I'm all for it. And I try to play that card when I'm talking to new folks that want to get sober. I try to meet them where they are, and then try to fit a program into their desire to get sober. Again, I like the 12 steps and the traditions, that's just me. But we are about getting sober. We have a good program called Soft Landing within SEALs in Recovery. Essentially, it's, if we get word of a guy going to rehab, we'll try to reach out to them and send somebody, a sober SEAL in our inner circle, to go ahead and go meet this guy where he's at. Give him a heads up, on what the expectations are for recovery, what he wants to get out of it, what the recovery is based upon. Is it smart recovery? Is it AA based? Whatever it is, just try to give him a heads up, and figure out, what the expectation is. And then, when they're there, or if we get them when they are there, we will talk to them about, how's it going? What do you need? What kind of support do you need to get out? Do you need a visit when you're allowed to have visitors? Do you need a phone tree to go ahead and talk to people? We have a great signal group for SEALs in recovery for our, retired and active duty SEALs. That the thread is great. There's, 20, 30 people on that. Some are proactive, some aren't. It's a great thing for, to reflect on in a day. It's a long thread. People chime in all the time. And the cool thing about SEALs in Recovery is we have guys from class 51, the mid-60s, till over class 300, which guys are graduating in the last year and a half. So we have a wide and deep, spectrum of sobriety and SEAL experience and real-world experience and civilian experience, because most of us that have tenured sobriety have come in through the civilian pipeline of AA or recovery. So we are able to talk about how we did it to get sober, which I think is very important, because I know I'm kind of all over the paper right now, shooting paper. My group isn't very tight right now, but that being said is, whatever it takes to get sober, whatever kind of sobriety is. I'm a big 90 and 90 person, 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm doing another one right now with a cat out in LA who wants some support. Alex, great guy, struggling a little bit, working a good program. But you go to 90 meetings in 90 days, And you're going to figure out what meetings you like, what you don't like, what kind of sobriety you're looking for. Attraction. AA is a program of attraction. You want to find somebody who has something that you want and mimic their sobriety or their lifestyle. So within that 90 and 90, you're going to find your meeting, you're going to find people that you want to be around, and that becomes your tribe. You know, thrive with your tribe. Connection is protection, people. Stay in the middle of it. Keep connecting. I have a couple of requirements for my sponsees or my mentor who I'm mentoring. If you're going to drink, pick the phone up before you did it. Pick the damn heavy phone up. If you have to drink, I'll send you some money for drinking. If you need it, I'll get you an Uber. I'll come get you. Just do it safely. And then we'll reevaluate why you did it. Hopefully they pick the phone in and I talk them out of drinking. 2 is read the doctor's opinion. Go to 7 meetings in 7 days. We'll talk about the doctor's opinion and what you liked about your meetings or didn't like about it. But again, the 90 and 90, you're going to find your tribe. You're going to find the folks you want to be around, and you're going to stay in the middle of it and hopefully stay in the middle of it. And that whole peer-to-peer relationship, I believe, makes your journey in sobriety incredibly strong. A lot of people that have gone out in the civilian pipeline and our SEALs recovery had stopped the connecting. They stopped going to meetings. You don't have to go to meetings to be sober. You have to have a connection, in my eyes, of folks with folks that are sober and tell you, you know, what I like to say, what time it is, and tell you the truth about what their sobriety looks like, and yours does. Not to take other people's inventory, but I can articulate what I did in my sobriety to make it work. And again, the only thing I did perfect for the last 13 and a half years, I have not drank. And if I drank, anything else I was dealing with would have got much, much, much worse. But on the back to SEALs and recovery and soft landing, you know, jiving with the guys, vibing with the guys that are in their rehab or what they're going through. Hopefully it's not being incarcerated. Incarceration. Use your words, John. Then we get guys that are done and they're in their, you know, individual outpatient section of their recovery. My counselor, who is phenomenal, who I'm going to have here on a podcast, I'm not going to tell you her name, she will introduce herself, but she's immersed in the SEAL community, is when we talk about outside of what I'm getting done in my recovery and mental acuity, is when people kind of lose the bubble and go out. And it's because they lose their connection. They don't know what to do. We had a guy that we helped out with our soft landing, went out and saw him in rehab. He got out, kind of thought he knew what to do. He didn't. He went out. He didn't go out because he didn't want to be sober. He went out because he didn't know the dance steps. I should have known this, and I didn't. Thank God he's sober now. He didn't hurt anybody or himself when he went out for a few days. He just needs some direction. And that direction isn't mandatory things that I think he should do. The direction is what I did and another SEAL did to make it work. Find your sobriety date, find your home group, get a sponsor, a mentor, a temporary sponsor, and move out with it and connect daily what you're doing. So, you know, that I kind of missed that. I sent somebody out there. The message wasn't all the way sent. We thought we had something. We didn't, but now we know for our little murder board after action report what actually, you know, it takes after you get out. So that's where we're pretty much at. I've recorded, I'll be recording some other podcasts. I'm going to try to drop at least one a week. They'll be for however anybody wants to actually, you know, talk about their sobriety. The stories are interesting. The people I know are interesting, and these people have worked a good program. And the folks that I'll bring in, like doctors, are people who I look up to in this journey, who I have learned and gained something through. There's great resources out there. One of them with the Naval Special Warfare Foundation is, upper right-hand corner is, family support or support, drop-down box. Do an intake about what you're going through, whether it's active duty, retired, or just got out after a few years. And it's spouses are welcome, family members welcome. And that resource has been pure gold for myself, my wife, who's going through some things with me and stood by my side. Folks have turned on to it, but it's an incredible resource that's out there to help folks. A lot of people have a lot of problems, and they're coming from the SEAL community, and these people are incredibly helpful, and they're resourceful, and they're compassionate, and they have empathy. They're not going to let you get away with anything, but it's a great resource. Moving through that, SEALs in Recovery, again, we're willing to help anybody. Our particular group is SEALs only. Lawyers have their own groups. Politicians have their own groups. Doctors have our own groups. The strength of SEALs in Recovery is we have our own group. Everybody went through BUDS. Most people have multiple deployments. Some have no deployments. Some have 30 years of experience in a team. Some have a couple of years. But the thing is, our group is derived from SEALs that graduated BUDS and got to a SEAL team. But that's our tribe. There's many tribes available. There's tribes for first responders. There's tribes for Marines. There's tribes for doctors. There's tribes for Green Berets. There's Delta Force operators. There's SWIT guys. They could find their own tribe. And that's what makes it great. But again, we are willing to help anybody. We have a website, sealsinrecovery.com. Our email address is sealsinrecovery@proton.me. We're on social media. We've had some, great help from folks who believe us. We've raised a little bit of money to support SEALs in Recovery. I hope you consider donating to our effort, because that funds our meetings on the East Coast. We commissioned a West Coast meeting. We have 2 meetings right now. We have our soft landing program. We're developing social media footprint. We're working with other professional groups, professional athletes, business community folks who are struggling. So again, we will try to help anybody out that needs help. We can point you in the right direction. We could help you with the military side of it. But please use us as a resource. We have a lot of sobriety in our group. We're currently helping many people in our program, out of the program, first responders, professional athletes, college athletes. It's good. We're giving back. And again, I'm John Hawley. I am an alcoholic. I hope you enjoyed this initial podcast, and the ones that are going to follow this. Again, I'm going to try to drop one once a week. But thank you for your time, and I hope to get some feedback and make this better. And I'm in my current office right now, my Dodge, shameless plug, TRX. And everybody have a blessed day. And if you're struggling, know that you're not alone. Go get it. Be proactive. Find your tribe. And there's people that love you and care about you. You're still in the fight. People will help you. Get out there and get some help. Thank you for letting me have part of your time.